Ford Mustang Challenge for 2025 enters its penultimate event weekend. The championships are still to be decided, although one is a little more cut and dried than the other. Capital of Texas, Austin is our venue for this weekend. Good food, great chat, and a fabulous racing circuit that's been here for a few years now and has established itself pretty firmly as a challenge to teams and drivers. 20 corners, rising 11 stories to turn one, big red, then dropping down through the flat out right-hand kink at turn through, then that sinuous snake-like section that goes from turn number 3 all the way to turn number 9. The back straight from turn 11 to turn 12 is a little bit of a curve, and more importantly has a couple of rises in it, and then the end of the track so complicated and technical as they wend their way and wind their way back to the end of the lap. In the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre, I'm John Hindorf. We'll hear from my co-commentator Arjuna Kankapati in a moment or two. The cars are just rolling off for this Mustang Challenge Race 1 here at Kota. Ford Mustang Racing, brought to you by Ford, built Ford proud. Well, Arjuna, we are into the clutch part of the season, with Robert Noaker having run away with the Dark Horse season so far. Is anybody going to bet against him notching up another couple of wins and taking the championship here this weekend, which he can do?
Might not happen in this first race. He needs to outscore his championship rivals by a full 200 points. But John, he's looking very good to close the championship out before we even head to the Charlotte Motor Speedway for the final event of the season. I think all eyes are kind of focused on Sam Paley and the other of the Paley Motorsports entries here today, Will Lucas, who we've seen both drivers across the season. Paley most notably at Road America, Lucas at Le Mans in the Invitational round. Those are two of the drivers that I think are really expected to try and push towards the front in what is a hometown event, John, for some of our teams. They were very much looking forward to this. Not sure they were looking forward to changeable conditions that greet them here for this first 45-minute race.
Let's have a quick look at the Ford Racing grid. Stephen Viger and Paolo Salvatore, the recently married Paolo Salvatore, on the back row for row number 8. 7 Dark Horse Legends cars, and that's the first 2 of them. In 5th position in that class, Texan Joseph Dederickx for Robert Noaker Racing. He's got Tom Tate alongside him in the number 8 car. Then it's the first of the Dark Horse runners, Tate Pritt in 12th position for Automatic Racing. Tech Sports' Colin Harrison is alongside him on position 11. Then back to the Dark Horse Legends with Alfonso Diaz, one of the championship contenders for Tech Sport. He's got Alex Bashura alongside him on overall roll 5. They're 2nd and 3rd in their respective class. Will Lucas in from the Mustang Cup. He's the points leader there. We did see him in the Le Mans Invitational as well in June. He starts in 7th in his first of the Mustang Challenge outings for this weekend. He is in the number 34 Paley Motorsport car. He's got Zachary Lee alongside him in the Silver Bullet. The number 48 is the Dark Horse Legends pole sitter in 7th position overall inside of row 4. Top 3 rows are all Dark Horse cars. By the way, the cars are identical in performance and build. It is the drivers that put them into the variety of classes, the 2 classes. Sandy Sotelo and Britt Casey are 2 Robert Noaker Racing drivers, and they are 6th and 5th, 7 and 91 then on the 3rd row of the grid. Sam Paley back in the championship in his own car after having to borrow one after a first lap accident at Road America. The number 7 is in Sam Paley in the number 26 is the 4th position, with Devin Anderson for Tech Sport and the number 22 alongside it. On the front row of the grid, McCumbee McAleer Racing's Marcus Ventos in the number 18, and Robert Noaker with another pole position, truly en route to the 2025 championship, the number 13 on the pole position. Now, what I will say is, as Arjuna referenced there, we've had not even rain, drizzle over the last hour and a bit, and in fact a little bit more than that. Actually, it's falling slightly heavier now, and there is signs of the track actually being properly damp rather than just greasy. I think we're going to start behind the safety car because none of these drivers have as yet been out on a wet track, and although the green flag has come up on the timing screen, the safety car is still out there. Now, the fact that we've got some drivers on the wettest part of the track, Arjuna, would suggest to me that that fourth place car of Sam Paley, he might be on the Michelin wets there and actually looking to keep his tyres as cool as possible. It was declared a wet race, so I presume they've all had to go on to the wet weather Michelin tyres. I'll try and get a look as they come by, but already quite clearly some drivers worried about overheating their tyres before we even get the first green flag.
And I guess in some ways part of that is the uncertainty, John, of not really having raced these tyres, especially I guess in Sam Paley's case with his on and off season in the Mustang Challenge. So that's just adding to the uncertainty and to the unknown that they're all heading into right now. And I think it's going to be interesting who's going to be able to fire off the best. I would assume it's going to be a single file start when we get underway eventually, which might actually make it quite interesting because Robert Nowaker, we saw this at VIR, very good at timing his restarts, John, to catch his fellow competitors out.
Yeah, I think this is a smart move by race control. All the usual IMSA faces are here. Some of the usual IMSA faces, not the full crew here as well, with just the single race series to support the FIA World Endurance Championship. So it's a sports car savvy crowd who have stayed on till what is coming up to 4:45 in the afternoon. And another race tomorrow where the forecast is very similar, which is it could be anything really. That will be tomorrow morning before the 6 hours of the Lone Star Le Mans. I think because it's the original start, we might actually get a side-by-side start, but I didn't get a chance to go to the drivers' meeting. I was busy doing some other interviews. However, I was told that the drivers had a pretty stern talking to to calm themselves down after what was described by one of our officials as untidy racing at VIR the last time out, and hopefully with these tricky conditions they will have heeded those warnings. The clock did start, by the way, at the end of the first formation lap, so rather as we do with the Bathurst 12 hours, we have an additional lap behind a safety car, but as you roll across after the first formation lap, the 45 minutes has started. At IMSA Radio, if you want to get in touch with us here in the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre, you might notice a slight change, and particularly if you're watching, you'll notice the new Ford oval with the Ford Racing logo in the top right of the screen. This is a rebrand for what we used to call Ford Performance, and I've managed not to do that in the context of when I should be saying Ford Racing so far this weekend, but I can't promise that that will continue. This, say Ford, is to further pull together all their competition aspirations across the world, and my goodness me, they're doing plenty of it. Green flag is in the air, and we do indeed have a side-by-side start. So the two blue and white cars come to the line with 40 minutes and 42 seconds to go. Robert Nowaker controls the field up the hill with Marcus Ventos right alongside him, but it's a slight advantage for the man in the number 13 car that has dominated as they fan up into Big Red at the top of the hill, 3 wide behind Robert Nowaker, who just lays down the power gently as they dive down the hill through turn number 2 in the dry. That will be absolutely flat. I would think that would be balancing the car with fingertips and your tiptoes on the throttle as they go through there. Remember, these are stick shift 3-pedal cars with the glorious sounds of the Puma titanium exhausts. 1 or 2 people sliding off in the middle of the S's there, but I think that's to be expected. I don't think we'll see any kind of sanction there. Up into second place for Devin Anderson in the red, white, and black number 22. He goes ahead of the Valvoline car, Marcus Vento. But Marcus wants to come back as they go over the rise with the flag of the state of Texas behind them. And those big V8s rumbling. Robert Noaker, Arjuna, has absolutely sprinted away, galloped away, we should say, as it's a Mustang. But everyone else scrapping for second as they go onto the back straight for the first time of actually under green flag conditions.
He took advantage, John, of Devin Anderson and Marcus Vento tussling up to that second corner, and Anderson was clinical to get the move done before slipping wide at the S's. And look at the margin, the rooster tail starting to be built up as they dive onto the brakes for the first time. Sam Paley now the one trying to get aggressive and force Anderson into a slight mistake. But Devin Anderson off the track once again. Track limits are a talking point often at the Circuit of the Americas, John, but with how slippy it is, I think you're going to want to keep the car and the tyres underneath you within the white lines as much as you can.
And the paint is very slippery here. Johnny Palmer and I have been calling the WEC qualifying and hypercar sessions, and anybody putting wheels on the paint, and it wasn't wet as it is now, actually. It was more greasy than the wet we're seeing now, and only 3 cars actually went out on wets. But anything on the paint is very, very difficult indeed. And this is a track where you need to have a rhythm. Coming out of turn 12, going through turn 13 on the inside, on the outside, and as ever, turn 19 and 20 are the areas that are being looked at very closely for track limits. Side by side again, Marcus Vento in that fabulous Valvoline car, trying to hold on to his position, but that position now is hanging on to the top 6 as he's dropped way back. Just not confident in that car at the moment as Sandy Satulo goes through and takes 5th position away from the man who started at the sharp end of the grid.
Although swap back around, Marcus Vento tries to send it back. Sam Paley's made his way forward to second in front of Devin Anderson, so let's keep an eye out to see if he's going to close on Robert Noaker. But John, one driver really impressing in these early stages is Britt Casey, who was a late addition in a 3rd Robert Noaker entry, and he's worked his way up to 4th right now, just in front of this little gaggle that comes over the top of the crest, and a spin behind them as they work their way down into the middle sector.
Try and work out who that is. Oh, and a penalty lining up on the wrong lane for Tom Tate for Competition Motors. Tom, an outsider, but certainly in the conversation for the Dark Horse Legends Championship title. Currently led by Alex Bashura with Zachary Lee in second, and Alfonso Diaz is in there as well. We'll keep an eye on those 3. Much closer than the gap that Robert Noaker has made in the Dark Horse Championship. More side-by-side action towards the end of the lap again, as they are battling for 3rd and 4th position with Devin Anderson and Britt Casey. Again, that's a great run through the field. You've really got to have confidence in the car in these kind of conditions, Arjuna. You can't be tense, you've got to be relaxed. If you're tense, you're going to make jerky movements, you're not going to be smooth on the steering wheel, on the brake, on the clutch pedal, although you can flat shift these cars if you want, but in these conditions you'll be wanting to hit the clutch and make sure you have as little that can unsettle the car as possible. This is all going to be about drivers with feel who'll make their way forward.
And a good example of that feel from Casey as the rear end stepped out on him. And I think, John, you know, everyone has said what makes No Acres so good is the consistency, and so you're seeing that, I think, right now with all of the little wibbles and wobbles off the corner that some of these drivers are just having issues putting all the power down. You don't have traction control. It's all at your right foot and how well you're able to balance the car as you go through the corners. Especially with having no running before they went out on the formation lap, John. This is one of the most difficult things for drivers when you're in these changing sort of conditions, not quite sure what's going to happen the next time you get to a corner. And so, seeing so far for the most part, drivers having to be a bit more tentative than maybe they would have wanted to be with a dry race.
Track temperature started out at 88 Fahrenheit. In fact, it's held steady at that. It's 31 Celsius. In the air, 79 Fahrenheit or 26 Celsius for those international audience. And I know that this championship has built up a really big following via the player at IMSARadio.com, the video player there, and IMSA.tv, Ford Racing's YouTube channel, and of course IMSA's YouTube channel as well. I can tell you that earlier on this week, when these guys were going out to do their first practice sessions, the track temperature was something in the region of 40 Fahrenheit higher than that. We were in the 120s. It was extraordinarily hot with the air temperature over 100 Fahrenheit for the back end of Tuesday, Wednesday, and all day Thursday. So it's well up in the high 30s Fahrenheit. And that was tickling 47, 48, 49 on the track, as I say. These are, in some ways, far more temperate conditions, but it's the lack of grip that's testing our Mustang Challenge drivers at the moment. With our leader, Robert Nowinger, having eased his way out to a 5.8 second lead. His fastest lap of the race, and he's been so consistent, as Arjuna says, all fastest lap and winning the race. It's been a bit of a, he's just been collecting those triples this season. His fastest lap of the race is a 2:34.5, which he did not last lap but the lap 4. And just to tell you how difficult it is here, Jeremy Fletcher set the race lap record here last year at a 2:20.675. So we're talking nearly 15 seconds difference between the fastest man on the track and the track record from last year. Zachary Lee's just put the fastest lap of the Dark Horse Legends racing. It seems to be getting that much drier, so I think people are just, drivers are beginning to get used to this. 2:37 for Zach Lee last time around, and he's doing his championship hopes no harm at all. Alfonso Diaz in second, Alex Bashura, championship leader, down in third position in that Dark Horse Legends battle. And that is a proper battle between those three, Arjuna. And really, at this stage, that one's too close to call, with effectively 2.5 races, or 2 2/3 races still to go.
That will come down to the wire. Yeah, I think that comes down to the wire at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Bashura's had a couple of rounds where he's been pegged back. I think that's the fairest way to say it. Hasn't been all his own fault. Gets tangled up in some contact with others, and so the leads come down to about 160 points, splitting 3 cars. I think the big factor at Charlotte is going to be managing tires, which, John, you know, right now with all these machines on the Ford, on the Michelin wet tires, which they have to do given that this race was declared wet by race control.
Correct.
It's probably also, like we were saying at the start, for some of these drivers like Sam Paley, it's their first practice session experiencing what this track's like and the grip that they're having. So, you know, now that we're 15 minutes in, you were saying there's a bit more confidence. I think we're seeing that from some drivers. Sandy Zotullo amongst them as he works on the back of Britt Casey.
Noticing quite a few drivers now on the straight bits of the track where they're not going to lose traction and slide sideways, dropping one side or the other of their Michelin wets on to the red paint, which is a little bit wetter than the track surface. Also seeing drivers searching for grip offline. It's often called the karting line. You'll see 1 or 2 drivers and you'll think, well, he's not getting anywhere near to the middle of the corner, the apex there. Sometimes if you give yourself a car's width or a car at a half width, you can find a little more grip Obviously the World Endurance Championship here, they've done 3 practice sessions plus their qualifying in hyperpole. The big cars, the fast cars that laid down the most of the rubber are on Michelin's. Got another tyre supply for the GTs, so there is going to be rubber on the racing line, and when that gets wet, as it is now, that is going to feel greasy, and that's why the guys here are moving around, looking at more unconventional lines. Satulo in the number 7 red-white car, and the Stars and Stripes number 91. Britt Casey battling over that position down at the bottom of the hill again, just ahead of them. That's Devin Anderson. So that's third, fourth, and fifth as they go under the bridge and through the S's again for the 6th time. This is a time-certain race, and we still have the better part of half an hour, so there's plenty to go on. No pit stops expected here, and these are 5 lug nuts, 5 studs on the wheels if you were to change tyres. But right now, and all of these drivers and teams will have watched what happened in the earlier sessions with the FIA World Endurance Championship. I think you're on your own at the moment as a driver. You're going to have to make the most of these wet tyres and make them last for the next half an hour.
It does seem as though that part of the track may be a little bit drier, John, and that's why, like you see right now with Robert Noaker, dipping wheels into the paint, which, if a driver asks for advice, that's probably advice number 1 that you'd give. Stay out of the painted stuff, but clearly using it as a strategical advantage, much like sometimes we talk about dipping wheels into the grass on iRacing and stuff like that. Paley's done a decent job at the front though, John. He's only lost about 2.5 seconds to your race leader since he made his way past Devin Anderson.
Yeah, very controversial, that driving on the grass in iRacing, isn't it? Cooling down one side of the tyres or the other, particularly during qualifying sessions. And here, these guys are doing it for exactly the same reasons. They're trying to keep the surface temperature of the Michelin wets to a manageable level. And Robert Noack is slightly backing in the number 13 R&R Mustang into turn 17 and 18. 16, 17 and 18, triple apex. If this was bobsled, you'd call that a 3 pressure corner. And you're balancing the car all the way through there. Used to be a nasty bump right on line on the final part, turn 18 there. And that's been shaved, and that part of the track, all that part of the track has been repaved relatively recently. Satulo pulls out the line again. Oh no, is he slowing? Because he's lost ground. He's certainly lost ground to the 2 cars ahead, and that's Britt Casey now challenging the number 22 of Devin Anderson. So was there a little mistake there by Sandy Satulo, back down into 5th position, and now lost, what, 3 or 4 cars lengths to the battle ahead of him, which is for the last step on the podium.
Maybe just wanted to get out of a bit of spray for a moment and thought there was a bit more moisture on the left-hand side of the track to cool those tires down. You know, we haven't seen, John, big rooster tails by any means being thrown by these cars. It's like you said, it's greasy. It's not like there's been a massive amount of downpour like we've had at some of the other IMSA events this year. I'm thinking back to Watkins Glen in particular, where the heavens opened up. And again, this is where it's the most difficult, because they're trying to figure out every lap it will change slightly, and they're trying to understand the fastest way to make their way forward. And Devin Anderson's been frustrating both Britt Casey and Sandy Satulo right now, but unable to make the move just yet.
And actually, I did Sandy Satulo a disservice the last time around, because he has closed right back in again, and that little gap that opened up was more because Britt Casey did his fastest lap of the race last time around, 2:36.3. Still 0.6 or so slower than the leader, and he's parlaying that into an opportunity to go for a position side by side, and through he goes into 3rd position as a huge sideways moment for Devin Anderson, coming off the back straight through down into turn 13, and now he's under pressure from Sandy Satulo. Further back down the grid, Alex Bashura losing an overall position to Colin Harrison for Tech Sport, but they're not in the same class. If you look at the door mirrors, red door mirrors on the number 21, very similar liveries on those cars for Alex and Colin, Spark Performance and Tech Sport, so not from under the same awning. But Alex coming through in the number 21 with the red mirrors and the red door squares and taking that position. Now, that might be a bit of bragging rights down at turn number 11, but it doesn't affect the amount of points in Dark Horse Legends Championship terms, Arjuna, that Alex Bashura is taking at the moment. The bad news for him is his closest rival is winning that race in a very creditable 8th overall. Zachary Lee with a 2-second gap back to Alfonso Diaz in the Dark Horse Legends category. Still Alex Bashura third from Joseph Denricks, who's one of the, I think, 5 Texas drivers that we've got here this weekend. And Tom Tate in 5th, 6th for Paolo Salvatore, and Stephen Viger in 7th position in the Legends. But that's going to trim that lead in the championship even more if it stays like this.
Especially since Zachary got his 10 bonus points for putting it on pole in class as well. So if the results hold as it stands right now, the lead will be down to 90 points, which in IMSA's point scoring format is the difference between first and effectively 6th position. So it's not a big margin that we're talking about, and again, that's why this championship is going to come down to the final race of the season, if you ask me, John, because that margin is so tight. To quickly touch on Colin Harrison, I think that's the car, John, that had that little spin over the top at turn 9 about 20 minutes ago. Brilliant. That we couldn't quite tell, because he's trying to recover his way through the fields.
Yeah, perfect. That has answered that one. He's right, he's closing in now. His next target, but it's 13 seconds up the road, is Alfonso Diaz. It's actually a team car, but again in a different class. Alfonso's just put his fastest lap of the race in, closed within a couple of seconds of Zachary Lee, who is leading the Legends. Still the best battle on the circuit between Devin Anderson and now Sandy Satulo, who's found his rhythm. I love, even in the dry, how much these Dark Horse R's move around, but in the wet, my goodness me, they are looking absolutely superb. Haven't talked about Robert Noaker for a while. He's still out front, and he stretched that lead another 4 seconds now, over 9 seconds to Sam Paley. Both of those two drivers having a relatively lonely race at the moment, but we've seen Noaker. We have literally run out of superlatives now as he runs onto the red outside of the track, driver's right. Hardy fans in the main grandstand staying right to the end of today's event. And thank you to them for that. But we ran out of superlatives for Robert Noaker in about half season, Arjuna. I think we're just going to have to make words up for him now.
I think we need to start wondering what he's part of the, I guess now, Ford Racing Junior team, as I'm sure they've slightly shifted their name.
Well done.
What are they going to do next year with him? Again, Sam Paley's coming off a podium in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge at VIR in the Core Motorsports Ford Mustang, and he had a superb drive in that race, to the checkered flag as well. And so for him to be 11 seconds back, yes, Roberts had a whole lot more seat time in this car this year, but again, running out of superlatives. So now we've got to start wondering, well, what car are we putting him in next to go racing? Maybe in a GT4, maybe in something in a GT3 campaign as well.
I think he's earned it. We had news today. Hello to Alan Prosser, by the way, who is watching Mustang Challenge on his phone back in the UK. And, he has a very nice beverage alongside him, a beverage of the adult variety. That's fine, he doesn't have to drive anywhere. Just hearing today, by the way, that I suppose the big brother of the Dark Horse R, the GT3, Ford Mustang GT3, will be getting, it's called an Evo, an Evolution for 2026. Just a little heads up from Ford Racing to let us know that. That was announced at lunchtime here at COTA, and no technical details about that other than it's basically being driven by their customers, and it will be the customer cars that get them first. All of the customer cars will be eligible for the upgrades by the start of the 2026 season, available for the start of the 2026 season, and all current cars can be upgraded to that. That's the GT3 version. How about a battle that is so tight and they are so much concentrating on each other that when Devin Anderson goes off and virtually had to show his pass to get back in, he was so far off the track at the end of the back straight at turn 12. Sandy Satsulo obviously taking his braking marker from the brake lights on the Tech Sport car ahead of him, pretty much followed off at his wheel tracks. They did very well not to lose grip on that paint there, but that's opened up a bigger gap again from those two to Britt Casey in third position, who's 4.7 seconds away from Sam Paley in second, who's 12 seconds away now from Robert Noaker in the lead. That's the Dark Horse and the overall category. Zachary Lee being caught by Tech Sports Alfonso Diaz. Zach did his best lap last time, but one around, but that has been absolutely answered by Alfonso Diaz, who's put the best lap of the legends in, 2:36.8. And now it's 0.737 of a second, how appropriate as we're right on the end of the Austin Bergman Airport, just over to, well, pretty much directly north of here. So if you think of the final corner, you were looking back down the straight towards the final corner, you quite often see the airliners taking off or coming into land right over the top of us here. We are just over, in fact we're just under 20 minutes, so I was just over halfway through each race of the Ford Mustang Challenge. We have a Ford Racing team update where we look at teams or individual drivers. Today we've selected the 3 major championship contenders in the Dark Horse Legend. So here is our Ford Racing team update, and leading them and therefore leading the DHL category, Zachary Lee for the company Magalia Racing. The number 15 from Tech Sport is Alfonso Diaz, who's making this really interesting at just about 3/4 of a second, and our championship leader for Nathan Sparks' Performance team is in 11th overall, but that is still 3rd in class, so good championship points for Alex Bashira. That's our Ford Racing team update, looking at the Dark Horse Legends Championship battle, which also right now, rather appropriately, is 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the Dark Horse Legends. We'll have 3 more cars to look at in our 2nd race tomorrow.
And this fight, John, for the DH Legends lead is also for championship honours. 20 points split Zachary Lee from Alfonso Diaz coming into this race with those 10 bonus points and qualifying on the board, and this could be momentum. Diaz had a couple of incidents at VIR that slightly pegged him back from being able to really close the gap on Alex Bashura in the way that he wanted to. They got a little bit stuck behind Marcus Vento, who's lost a bunch of ground to the rest of the Dark Horse category, but some clean air re-emerges with 16.5 minutes still left on the clock.
And now here is that age-old question, Arjuna. We've seen it in the virtual world as much as you see it in full metal racing as we have here. It's no more full metal than Ford Mustang, particularly with the Dark Horse R, which are so closely related to their road car brethren. You have that conundrum as a driver. You're battling for a championship. How much risk do you put into one more position and that handful of points? It could be a bag full of points. It could be a bag full of bolts if you hit the Armco and give your team some work to do overnight. And that balance, that risk versus reward, we often hear drivers talk about that. It's the sort of decisions that they're making every race. It always seems so much more important and therefore more difficult a decision, certainly more considered a decision when you get down to the points being positions towards the end of the season.
I guess one thing that will factor in, John, is the fact that there's no traction control. These cars do have ABS, which does sometimes invite you to descend a lunge a little bit more, knowing you've got the safety of the ABS system, the 11-way Bosch system to bail you out of trouble. So I think that's part of it. But that shot right there just showed what's going through Zachary Lee's mind. Vento's still making a couple of mistakes here and there, and at some point, Diaz is going to want to use one of those opportunities to force his way through. So Zachary Lee's trying to balance, right, do I try and force my way through to avoid Diaz trying to make the move? Because sometimes the best defense is a good offense.
And in some ways, Zachary Lee's got the worst job, hasn't he? Because he's trying to attack Ventos and trying to defend from Diaz. Doesn't have to pass Ventos. He's leading his class, but he is now affecting the battle that he's having to hold on to that lead. And Robert Noaker, having decided that 11 seconds wasn't enough, has just put in the fastest lap of the race, 2:32.468. Pulls out another 1.2 seconds. It's now over 13 seconds to Sam Paley. Zachary Lee despite being, in fact, he's got past Diaz. Now, he's got past Ventos. Now, did Ventos just go wide there at the end of the back straight? Yes, he did. Big sideways moment for Zachary Lee, but he still put his fastest lap and the fastest lap of the DHL racing as well. But it's only half a second between those two as we head down into the last dozen or so minutes of this race. I may be tempting fate here, Arjuna, and you know well about the curse of the commentator. And we have got Johnny Palmer, who's the king of the curse of the commentator, on duty with us in the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre this weekend on WEC duty. I'm very impressed with the standard of drive that we've seen in this first almost half an hour of racing here. These are tough conditions. These are difficult cars to drive at the best of times, and they are in some ways old school cars with the H-pattern gearbox. And needing to learn how to heel and toe. They do have automatic blip on the downshifts if you want to use it, and it is very, very good. But my goodness me, this has been a really, really, really impressive show of skill from all 16 of our Mustang Challenge drivers, who are all still circulating.
We had a few more retirements than I think we probably wanted to see at VIR, so this is a nice sort of change of pace. And I think a great way to look at it, John, is to see the progress of Will Lucas in the 34. He's had 7 wins as that's deep at the end of the back straightaway from Zachary Lee. And guess what? Alfonso Diaz is there to pounce and take the lead away.
Wow. That's big in the championship. That is very big in the Dark Horse Legends Championship. They are still at the moment taking championship points out of Alex Bashura, who continues to run in 3rd place ahead of Joe Dedricks, but that's 7 seconds. So Alex is cruising home to 3rd here. He's just put his fastest lap of the race in. I think it's drying up a little bit, and with 12 minutes to go, people are realising that they might have a little bit of performance left in their Michelin wets. If I've got performance, let's use it. But this is going to tighten things up. If we thought perhaps we were going to have a clearer view of the Dark Horse Legends at the end of this weekend, and maybe the 4, I did mention Tom Tate on the outskirts of the conversation, but maybe 4 is down to 3, but I don't see 3 being down to 2 by the end of this weekend, unless someone has some terribly bad luck out of those top 3, and even then it wouldn't be insurmountable with the way the points pay here. 11 and a half to go. Robert Noaker still holding on to a more than 13 seconds lead at the front of the field. We're concentrating on the battles down through the field, and Devon Anderson and Sandy Sotelo have given us plenty of enjoyment and entertainment as they're battling for 4th position. It's Britt Casey in 3rd, 8 seconds behind Sam Paley in 2nd, and then a 13-second gap to Robert Noaker. There was a rumour going around the paddock earlier on in the season that the drivers had clubbed together to buy Robert Noaker a 2.5 months cruise to try and give them a chance to get back at him in the championship. I don't know whether that was true or not, but it's a good story. Noaker has been incredible this year. From the very drop of the first green flag at Sebring, and what an event that was, with these cars making their Sebring debut at the Mobile 112 Hours of Sebring in March. And since then, he has not been headed in the championship. It's as simple as that. He's going for what will be his... Oh, I've lost count of his consecutive wins now, but he's won everything going this year. Now, is this an opportunity? Put another fastest lap in Noeka there, 2:31.416. Now, is this an opportunity further down the field for Marcus Vento? No, he's just been passed. I know he's just been passed by Alfonso Diaz and Zachary Lee, but he's pulled his way back to those two. Colin Harrison, Alex Bashura, Joe Dederick's, Tom Tate, that's down to 13th position. Tate Pritt in 14th, Paolo Salvatore did get married, as promised. Promised his fiancée, Michelle, that if he got on the podium, they would get married. Got on the podium in the first race at VIR, got married after the second race. Absolutely tremendous stuff. Michelle working with him on Torre Racing, very much a family affair. All 16 cars still running. Robert Noeka on lap 14 with still 9 minutes to go, and I would say a drier, if not a dry line, beginning to be visible, particularly from the shots from the higher up camera positions now.
I agree, both visually but also looking at the lap times. That's improvement not just from drivers getting more comfortable, feeling more in tune with the surface, but just having a bit more grip as well. And to go back to what I was going to say before the swap for the lead in Dark Horse Legends, to see Will Lucas in that 34 machine, John, to be right around the mid-pack. He's coming off 7 wins in the Mustang Cup, which is the introduction to racing that Ford has got on their pyramid. You go from Mustang Cup to Mustang Challenge, then maybe up to a GT4, maybe up to a GT3, all on the same platform. And so Will's he's got plenty of potential. We know that for a fact, but there's been a step up in many ways, even from some of these Dark Horse Legends drivers, to really bring a lot more consistency, even in these tricky conditions in Texas.
Yeah, Will Lucas driving that second Pirelli Motorsport car, number 34, doing a bit of a Robert Noeka as far as the Mustang Cup is concerned. It runs exactly the same car as Arjuna said, but it runs in a slightly different conditions, with 2 races a weekend. But effectively, the 2 races can be 2 separate championships, and so you do practice, qualifying in a race on, let's say, Saturday, and then practice qualifying a race on Sunday, and they're effectively 2 separate meetings. It's actually the way DTM works as well. The difference being that you can share a car with somebody, so driver A can do the Saturday championship and driver B can do the Sunday championship. And Will has been doing a cracking job. He was with us at Le Mans for the Invitational. Had a quick chat with him there, loving life, and I suspect we'll see him in this championship next year. That's my thought. I'm not making an announcement for him, but part of the championship, if he was to win the championship, it looks at the moment with his championship lead like he's got a more than evens chance, let me put it that way. And part of that championship is a contribution to being in this championship next year from Ford Racing. Across the line, Diaz and Lee, Alfonso Diaz, Zachary Lee. The Silver Bullet still looking... actually, no, I've just realised Zach Lee's not in his normal car, is he? It's taken me to now to realise that that's a plain white car that Zach is in, rather. And there is the Dark Horse pass for the lead, whilst I was considering the different livery. So there's a story there that I need to wander down to the paddock to find out. So Zachary Lee from a company Macaleer Racing up into the lead, retakes that lead, and those extra points in the battle with Alex Bashura, who still runs third. Tell you what though, is Alex all right? Yes, no, he stood his fastest lap last time around. 5.5 minutes to go, and I don't know about you, Arjuna, but I'm not calling who's winning Dark Horse Legends.
No, and that was just the smallest of mistakes. You know, you want to break deep into turn one. It's this uphill climb. You can use gravity in your favor. You just get tempted to break that little bit too deep. And unfortunately for Alfonso, fell afoul of that and just opened that door. And now you're going to have to work hard, because I think initially maybe Zachary was getting a little bit caught out by Marcos Vento being in front. But since Vento is sat back, all he needed to do was avoid another mistake, which happened once again at the end of the back straight.
Yeah, the third car in that battle is still Marcos Vento, the car with slightly more blue on it. But he is in a different class. So whatever happens, he's staying in 7th position at the moment. Colin Harrison is the next car back to him, but he's only 20 seconds back. Another fastest lap of the race for Robert Noaker. So not only are the conditions improving, and in fact pretty much everybody putting in their fastest lap of the race last time around, but Robert is a second quicker than everybody else, than the next best, in fact, last time around, on worn wet tyres. So he's absolutely loving life at the moment. They're kind of going to be wearing down. Michelin wets are such a brilliant tyre that as they wear down and as it gets drier, they almost sort of morph into an intermediate. The tread blocks will move around if you overheat them. That's why you saw people like our leader, drivers like our leader, Robert Noaker, getting onto the red to cool them down. But as those tread blocks go down, they look much more like intermediates, and therefore you're putting slightly more rubber on the ground as the track gets drier. They're a great crossover tyre, Michelin wets, and we're seeing the absolute best of them here by the fact that 42 minutes into a race that has been run not in torrential conditions, the tyres have still got enough performance in them for every driver bar 2 last time around, or the last time before, and now bar 4 this time around, have just done their fastest laps of the race. And still the battle for Dark Horse Legends rages on. 7th and 8th position. I think it'll be the white flag for Robert next time he goes across the line. But again, Alfonso Diaz, Zachary Lee, they are having far too much fun as they go on the back straight once again, Arjuna.
I was just thinking when you were talking about how the tyre, you know, evolves over its usable life. Watching Noaker and even watching Diaz and Lee through the S's, they are dancing. They are sliding around just as much as they were at the start of the race when it was a little bit more greasy. And I think that's the sign, John, of just how much more comfortable they have become now as well. They've had their 44 odd minutes of practice, and it comes down to this as we head on to the final lap with DHL win very much up for grabs.
And indeed, the white flag has been shown to Robert Noaker, who makes the turn at the top of turn 1 and now plunges down to what is a visual dry line through turn 2, and I think he was flat through there. Balanced the car through turn 3, maybe just a little bit of left foot braking there, all the way onto the apex of turn 4 and 5. 6, you don't get on the inside curb quite as much because you have to swing it back for turn 7, which is where he is now. Now he climbed the hill to turn 8 to take all of the inside curb there. If you can get it over to it, nicely done. Get the right hand wheels on the red there. Over the top brow at 9, actually straddled the orange anti-cut device there, so running a slightly higher ride height than say some of the WEC cars. So already through turn 10, which is a flat out kick, down to turn 11. Slight rise in the road there as he turns left-handed onto the 1.2 kilometre long back straight for the final time. He will head across to cool down his Michelins. He's still thinking the right-hand side Michelins might be just a little bit warm, and he's almost off the track there and kicking up a little bit of wet to make sure that left and right were getting cooled down, but careful to keep some part of his right-hand Michelins inside the white line. So that's absolutely thinking driving there by Robert Noaker. The team ready to cheer him home. He's just got the big sweeping corners of 17, 18, 19 and then 20 to come. Once he's got through that tricky, almost hairpin at 15, which is where he is now. He'll ride the inside curb here. Do not go over the white line on the way out. I think he's all right there. Now under the road bridge, drifting it in and laying the mission and rubber down. This is great stuff on his last lap. Is he going to put another fastest lap in? Officials have told R&R that they can go to the wall. He's drifting the back end of that Mustang round. If this was Marc Marquez on two wheels, he'd be absolutely delighted with the way that Robert is backing that car into the corner. Turn 20 for the final time, down through the gearbox. Let the V8 sing. He drifts it out to the red and white curb and takes the first of two races here this weekend. And the streak goes on for Robert Noecker, who stretches his lead at the top of Dark Horse. It'll be Sam Paley crossing the line in second place, 18.5 seconds at the line. Britt Casey fought his way through to make the 1-3 for Robert Noecker Racing, and the number 91 then is the third step of the box. But what about Dark Horse legends Alfonso Diaz and Zachary Lee still battling it out? It looks like it's going to be Diaz who will get the verdict with the black galloping pony on the side. Yeah, he's got enough to see that one home, and that is going to tighten up the championship battle even further. Arjuna, he's doing the arithmetic, I know he is, down towards the final corner for Alfonso. Good scrap between him and Zachary Lee, and the fastest lap of the DHL race on the last lap to Alfonso Diaz, who takes the top step of the podium from Zachary Lee. And we'll wait a few moments just to bring Alex Bashura across the line to complete our Dark Horse Legends podium. There goes Marcus Vento. Colin Harrison will be next. There's Colin, and there is Alex Bashura, who goes ahead and across the line. Joe Dederick's on home turf ahead of Tom Tate in 4th and 5th in the DHL category, and Paolo Salvatore will head Stephen Vaitia home. Well, another signature Robert Noecker flag to flag victory. I don't think I've seen him any more dominant than that. As the conditions get trickier, he just gets better. Arjuna stretches his championship lead. But what about the Dark Horse Legends? The man of the moment and the man with the momentum is Alfonso Diaz.
My spreadsheet has crunched its numbers, and as I have it, what was a 160-point lead for Alex Bashura is now down to 120, covering the top three, with just 100 back to Alfonso Diaz. Like we were saying, John, that race for the DHL Championship will go all the way to the wire at Charlotte. Doing the math for Robert Noecker, he is 80 points short of having the championship wrapped up, John. So with the number of cars we have in the field this weekend, as long as he starts tomorrow's race, that should put Robert Noecker as our 2025 Mustang Challenge champion.
And I'll tell you now, I do not think he will drive any differently for that. I think he wants to sweep the season, and that would be an incredible achievement if he was to do it. He was not challenged. We had an extra formation lap because of the difficult conditions and the first time these cars had been out in the damp. He led at turn 1 at the end of the first lap, at the start of the first lap, excuse me. The scrap started behind him, and for a moment Devin Anderson was up into second place, but the battle behind him gave a chance that really you can't afford to give Robert Noecker. He doesn't need to be having any help to pull away from the field, but those guys scrapping amongst themselves just did that, and he drove off into the distance. What we did get was some great battles further down the field. Thank you to Sandy Sotolo and Devin Anderson and Will Lucas and Casey Britt, who drove through splendidly to third step of the podium for the Legends, because they gave us the entertainment. What Robert Noecker gave us was a lesson in how to drive a Ford Mustang Dark Horse R in very difficult conditions, putting 20 seconds on the next best and driving away to extend his championship lead. As far as the Dark Horse Legends was concerned, well, Alex Bashura drove, I think, a really sensible race and will hold the championship lead, but it's all getting very tight Alfonso Diaz and Zachary Lee. Zachary running in a white car, which I think, and thank you to our Ford Racing colleagues for this, he did get some damage last time out, almost could say who didn't. So I'm not sure they've had the time to either rewrap his repaired car, or he may be running in the McCumbee McAleer Racing spare car this time around. But nevertheless, he put on a great show with Alfonso Diaz, which eventually went to the Tech Sport driver in the number 15. But it's another Robert Noaker Racing and Robert Noaker show, as he is still perfect on the season with a nice drift across the line. He closes out the victory in the first of 2 races this weekend. Well, unofficially, here are our Ford Mustang Challenge results of quarter race 1. Let's just recap on that. Noaker Paley Case will be on the Dark Horse podium. Devon Anderson fought hard for his 4th place ahead of Sandy Sotelo, Will Lucas, Alfonso Diaz, Zach Lee. Those 2 battling for the Dark Horse Legends lead. Marcus Vento in 9th, the top 10, completed by Colin Harrison, then Alex Bashura, Joseph Dedricks, and top take for it, Paolo Salvatore and Stephen Viger. We sent out 16 and we sent back to the paddock 16 as well. First part of the job is done. 80 points required for Robert Noaker tomorrow to take the championship. Join us tomorrow morning as we'll bring you more 2025 Ford Mustang Challenge action from the Ford Racing Global Broadcast Centre. For our junior counterparty, I'm John Hindhaugh, and for the whole team here and at Concord, thanks for being with us. Enjoy your Saturday. Come back, we'll do it again tomorrow. Bye bye.